Hello, this is my evaluation, and I'm here talking about my short film Oddlestop, which is for my final major project. It started off as a part of my dissertation on the League of It started off as my dissertation on the League of Gentlemen, and I knew we had to create something on a similar vein of what we studied in our dissertation. So I wanted to create that sort of sketch show sitcom, which is what my dissertation was about, whether the League of Gentlemen is a sketch show or a sitcom. The dissertation itself wasn't an easy task. I didn't. I really struggled with it because I had a very specific subject. The conventions of a sitcom in the League of Gentlemen and the conventions of a sketch show in the League of Gentlemen. Not any others. I wanted to fully focus on that, so I really struggled to come up with certain content. But it definitely helped with certain answers and with the storytelling and stuff like that, if that makes sense. So making this, I wanted it to be more story based than comedy based. So then the audience, if they didn't find it funny, they could still enjoy it, but they could follow the story. And that's what the League of Gentlemen do. If you don't find it funny, I honestly have never laughed at League of Gentlemen. I find it absurd, which is what I love about it. But I found the stories a bit more interesting. They did that later on in the first series. They did. Do you mind? In the first series, they did a smaller story. So they did a new road coming to Royston Vasey, and that went throughout every single sketch that linked them. And then series 2 they did I think it was a nosebleed epidemic, and then series 3 there was a proper story. You had to follow each episode to get it, and every single episode the final would change, if that makes sense. So I knew I wanted to do that for my final major project, so I put them in their own setting. So I created a village called Oddlestop, and that's where the title came from. It's the characters from my previous YouTube sketches come together in this world called Oddlestop. So that's the idea behind it. Overall, the pre-production process was a bit difficult because I didn't know what I needed. For example, I knew I didn't want a shot list because I knew the shots were just going to be a simple shot reverse shot. So I didn't want to, because I didn't want it to look cinematic, because the storylines was going to be very minimal, like the first series, as I mentioned earlier, about the League Gentlemen. It was just going to be a very simple story. The original story was talking about a couple that moved to Oddlestop, and they meet strange characters on the way. That's the simplest storyline, and each character would link for a reason. I think a character called Polly would have was an ex-girlfriend for one of the members of the couples. Drew, the character, was going to be the brother, and Luke, originally called Lewis, was going to be a scientist that lived with one of the characters, and they just bump into each other. That story went quite far ahead, and I did all the pre-production. I did a risk assessment. I didn't do a storyboard. What else? What else did I do? I did a risk assessment, script. I can't remember what I did overall on my pre-production, but I know I didn't do loads for the reason that I don't think it would have been useful. When I was planning to film, the day I was planning to film, my actor dropped out, and panic stations went everywhere because I had no sketch or film or actors to film, and I wanted that specific actor for a reason, because because I was planning to develop this for stage. That's the plan for the future of this. Plan the stage version. I know we get into this slightly, but the reason I wanted that specific actor is because I wanted someone, because it was a stage show, I wanted someone that could react with an audience, because he's done pantomime and he's played the buttons, he's sort of role, and he's good reacting with an audience. So I wanted that specific actor. That's why people did say, why didn't you get a new actor? I wanted that specific actor for a reason. So that's solely why, because he knows how to work with an audience and he's theatre trained. I didn't want a film actor. I wanted a stage actor being put into a film. It's a new environment for them, but it was just something I wanted to do. So that's why I didn't get a new actor. So I was kind of worried instantly. Originally, I did have a contingency plan, but that fell apart. But then the backup plan, which is what I created today, was the house where I am the only actor in the entirety of the short film, where I play a version of myself and live with these characters and I speak to them. some of the routines and sketches, I know the Luke sketch is the same routine as what was in the original sketch, so that was taken. But the Drew sketch and the Polly sketch were new. So what I thought we'd do is I'd take time to watch the film, and then I'll pause it at points and speak about those segments. And yeah, let's do that. Here we go. This bit's a theme tune. I wanted, because I was formatting like a TV show. I wanted it to have an opening like theme tune, so that's the idea with this. So I tried to find music similar to the League of Gentlemen theme tune, which is sort of like a Halloween-y theme. So that's why I picked that. So I used video footage from my characters before. So I used Polly, the original Polly sketch, and I went and shot B-roll with this, and yeah.
Hello, I'm Drew.
For that character, I always say that first line with all the characters, because I never really. One thing I didn't do in this, which I didn't realise until afterwards, was that I didn't name or tell people the name of the characters. I do that line with Drew just because that's what I wanted, but I don't say Polly's name. Polly's name isn't even said in this. It's not. The opening sequence sort of luckily explains it. That's one of the reasons why the names came up in the title sequence. But I don't say Luke's name. He's mentioned in this sketch just so it links with that. And I don't say Polly's name once at all.
Bloody hell, Drew, what are you doing?
Watching you sleep.
Why?
Drew is sort of one of the absurd characters. He's sort of like this. He's very disturbed. He's a very disturbed character, and you don't know why. When I was writing this sketch, when he says "watching you sleep," when he says "watching you sleep," the reason I made him say that was solely because. For that creepy thing, but I realised I did want him to seem like a stalker, so I made it relevant to the next character. So he's just said it's for an experiment.
For research.
Or a research.
For what?
It's an experiment for Luke.
What, the guy that moved in yesterday?
He is studying the art of sleep.
What art of sleep? There isn't an art of sleep.
So I wanted, in the League of Gentlemen, they have this sort of absurdist sort of approach, and also we would say it has conventions of surrealism, but it's more absurdism. So I came up with like the silliest ideas, like this one, the art of sleep. That doesn't exist. I did have an idea for a cutaway of, but I didn't want to put a cutaway in because it's the only cutaway that was going to happen, so it wouldn't have been happen with all the characters, so it wouldn't have happened. Yeah, if that makes sense. So it was going to be a theatre with all the actors just asleep and the audience just sitting there watching it and nodding like they're acknowledging it. That was my plan, but that didn't happen because it wouldn't have been consistent with cutaways. Wouldn't be consistent with the sketch, and it'll probably be the only cutaway. I might do in the future as one of the story plot holes, or plot lines, not plot hole.
Well, okay.
I think one of the things, as mentioned, you'll hear it more often. I use the live mic from the DSLR. I used the Canon 1300D, and I used the live mic. I didn't use a Rode mic. This is just solely to help with the audio, so I didn't have to put loads in. That was just to benefit me because of time constraints, because I only had about a week or two to actually make this. And that helped. That actually helped, but obviously there's that hissing sound that all mics have. So I put another one over the top of it, like an artificial one, and it actually does sound artificial. The entire thing. It sounds fake, in my opinion. Yeah. So in this, I had a little bit of element of creepiness to Drew.
Please get out. This is getting creepy.
Yeah. The problem, what I do differently with this sketch is it didn't go anywhere. Like, nothing really happened. It's about a few minutes, about a minute or so's worth of just them two having a conversation, and there's no plot. He just walks out. I would expected I mean, it's never mentioned in the feedback, but I would have expected him to walk out and have another conversation with Drew and discover it, or maybe be there with Luke, which you'll see in a second, talking with Luke, explaining the story. I don't know why I didn't do that. I actually there's a slight reason, but that's just a technical reason for me. But I'll get to that when we get to Luke. There is a slight shake when that comes on, when that explosion happens there. I didn't want it to be too overdramatic, because originally it was going to be a proper full-on shake, but then it would look like a 70s sitcom, and I didn't really want to go for that approach to look like a silly sitcom. It's a mix of a sketch show and a sitcom, as I've mentioned.
What the hell was that?
This shot was actually dipped at an angle. I had to rotate it. That's why it's a bit zoomed in. One of my main concerns with that shot was I thought it went on a bit, but when I did it, I just improvised playing with the chemistry set that I have, and I tried to find a bit where something happens, a contingency thing. That's just from an actor's point of view there.
What the hell are you doing?
Testing.
Testing what?
It's an experiment.
What is it?
I think with each shot, you can sort of hear it jumps a bit too much between each shot.
I don't think I left it too long. This, behind the scenes, I had someone behind the camera reading the other characters' lines when I was reading them, and sitting in the same place just so I can get a general idea of where they are. But I think they said the lines a bit too quickly, so then I couldn't follow on, so I didn't have time to cut before they said it, because as soon as I finished they said the line, so I had to cut it as soon as I finished the sentence. Usually you'd leave it or overlap it, but that couldn't work or couldn't happen, sadly. So I think if I had to do it differently in the future, I would tell them just to wait a few seconds just for the edit.
It's a special powder.
Okay.
Do you want to know what it does?
Not really.
This is again with another absurdist thing of a plot that it's a simple build up to a joke. So in another sketch I do called The Bad Ghost, the joke I have is one side of the door he's got clothes on, and when he opens the door on the other side of the thing he's got no clothes on. I knew that joke, I've heard that joke before, but I wanted to have my own build up to that punchline. So I came up with The Bad Ghost. With this, I created a special powder to do a joke which comes up in a second, which was a very absurd thing, which I'll get onto this in a second.
There we go. It's a special powder that when it comes into contact with another surface, it explodes after 10 seconds. There we go. There we go.
Why are you making that?
Oh, it's for the army.
Again, there is a slight shake with that and the blood burst. I wanted it to look quite graphic because of the dark elements to it. I wanted to have a dark element because the League of Gentlemen is verges onto black comedy. And some people said it was graphic, some people said that's the funniest scene. So it reassured me that it got some laughs, because I was too keen. One of the most comedic, one of the biggest nightmares of a comedian is they don't think their material is funny.
What the hell are you doing?
I am praising God.
No, you're praising that Daniel Howell.
What did you just call him?
Daniel Howell.
How very dare you?
It's Dan Howell.
Whether I think what I would do in the future with that bit of music, that tense music, I would cut it to when she starts speaking now of it's Dan Howell, because she says it in such a way it sort of makes sense for it to stop. Because when I was editing, I was like, so I just fade it out, and then it will then everyone would just go, okay, it's just finished. But that would make more sense if it just stopped at that point. Yeah.
You know, like Dan and Phil?
Well, I've heard people call him Daniel Howell.
Yeah, well, I'm not calling my babes that.
He is not your baby.
He is, and by the way, I wrote him more fan fiction.
Again?
Yeah.
The problem I have with this sketch is I did another sketch with Polly that was on a similar vein to this one, where she speaks about fan fiction for the YouTuber Daniel Howell. And I did pretty much the same thing. I just wrote the same thing again. in a different context. To me, it's the same sketch, with a slight difference. So earlier on, you saw him with the photos on Google of a load of Daniel Howell stuff. And we were saying that's some sort of shrine, like a modern day shrine. Originally, I was going to make a shrine, but due to time, I wasn't able to make.
Do you want to hear some?
No, not really, but you're going to tell me anyway.
When we did write this character sketch, I'd written Drew and Luke's sketch, and I had no idea on how to put Polly into it. And I asked a friend of mine who I themed the character off, and she loves that, what she thinks could happen, and that's where the idea for the fan fiction shrine came. We broke down the character, bullet pointed each trait of the character. And so we can identify a story from the character, which was very useful. And one problem I have with this shot, again, this was wonky and I straightened it up, but it still, to me, is a little bit too wonky. And you can see in the mirror here, the light sort of reflects on it, but I couldn't change that. I didn't realise that until the edit.
Anyway, aren't you? Dan walked in on Phil, naked,
Oh my god.
and he got very excited and amazed when he saw his throbbing man flesh. It made some...
That's enough! End! That's enough!
What?
Can I please, at least for one day, go through a day at this house and this village without needing to go into therapy?
Welcome to Oddlestop.
Now you may notice there the colour dips back to normal. The adjustment layer, I didn't extend it long enough for it to work. It was pointed out by a few of people who I asked for feedback, and some people said it actually works in a way. I can't exactly remember what they said, but it was sort of like it's sort of realising of its reality. It looks real now because it's not adjusted. It looks like it more goes into reality, like this is a real situation. If that makes sense. Made sense to me. But that was the idea, and I think it does work. It does bug me that I didn't do it, but I think it does work. And I did the end. This gag with the except for my cat, I did got the idea from somewhere else. They did Top Gear did a thing talking about an eel and an explosive. They killed an eel, and they did that joke no animals were harmed making this film except from an eel. And I like that joke so much. I told it to a few people what they thought. Some people thought, yep, that is funny, and other people thought you might annoy a few people. But I did it. I put it in and I showed a few people, and they found it like it was a good move, and it's good like last laugh in the film, and I think it's very good. And that's really the end of my short film there, and I'm very happy with it. In the future, obviously, I'd make sketches. I think in the future, I'd definitely either have someone else help me write it. I definitely would concentrate more on the story element. With this one, with the first one, it was the couple, and I could write the scripts linking to the story. This one, there is no plot. There is no narrative. It doesn't really follow the equilibrium structure. I can't remember the name of it. You could say there's one with the cat. The equilibrium was the cat was alive. The new equilibrium was the cat was dead. But you know, there isn't really something you can follow. You can't follow it. There isn't really a beginning, middle, and end to it, apart from the getting ready for the day you consider a beginning. I want to now go through the feedback I've got on the short film. Let me just get. So the feedback, I've had to get the messages because I screenshot. I didn't put on my phone. I'm recording that for the Facecam. So the feedback I received, obviously, as I mentioned earlier, with the adjustment layer. Some people said it reminds them a lot of The League of Gentlemen. It's reminiscent of the British comedy from the 1970s. Also, the lighting is good and it's consistent throughout. Yes, I used a ring light for each of the shots. I put the camera on the ring light because there's an attachment that could go on the ring light, and that was basically the tripod throughout. We did have another camera for some angles, but they just didn't work. Yeah, that's how I went with it using the ring light. I definitely would use the ring light a lot more, but I think I'd position it differently. When I did the Drew sketch, at some points you can see the reflection of the ring light in his glasses. As I mentioned before, there's a bit in the mirror. So I definitely would think more about how I would do the ring light and where to position it and see if it doesn't get in the way. We did notice the ring light in the glasses during filming, and we tried to fix that as best we could. Someone said, also, even though you played all the characters, there was a clear distinction between them and you made the conversations seem realistic as they would be between two people. Yeah, so the shot reverse shot worked as in a conversation because I followed the 180-degree rule. So it didn't confuse the audience, in my opinion. So obviously that's why I put wigs on, glasses on, etc. And I think that worked. Yeah, improvements in the future. Yeah, as I said, I definitely do more of a story. I definitely try and follow a structure. I think the 3-act structure. I think that's what it's called. Yeah, the 3-act structure. That was it. The equilibrium, disruption, and new equilibrium. I remembered it. I definitely follow that and have something out of it. With the original idea, the equilibrium was them coming to visit the town. The disruption was meeting the characters. The new equilibrium would have been them moving into the place. That's now officially their home. And so it followed it very subtly, but it followed it. This one, it doesn't. I don't see it. It probably might have a minimal one, like I said. The equilibrium for the cat scene is probably the only where the cat explodes. The equilibrium is it's alive. The disruption is it dies. The new equilibrium is they don't have a cat anymore. So you could say that, but that's really it. So that's the end of my evaluation. Yeah, thank you.